Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the shop. My name is Doug. It is a cold, rainy fall New England day here, 2017. So what better way to spend it than down in the shop making a project. Today's project is going to be out of wood. It's going to be 2 serving trays for a friend of mine. It's going to include a plywood bottom, some routed handholds on the side, and the use of a box joint fixture on the table saw for the corners. So we'll talk about the design a bit and then head out and make some sawdust. Thanks for joining me. Alright folks, really simply the design of it's pretty simple. It's basically just a box. Your simple box there. This is going to be 20 inches long by 12 inches wide by 2.5 inches high. We're going to have some box joints on the corners for strength. We're going to have an inset routed plywood bottom, and on the sides we'll also be routing some handholds. Nothing fancy, pretty straightforward box. What I've gone ahead and done is I've already picked out the pine, just some select boards. I've gone ahead and taken the rough stock and cut it to size, and basically I didn't film any of that, but I can describe it right here. Here's the fence, table saw. I feed one edge through the table saw so that I can get it straight. And with that edge, I then take all the pieces over to my chop saw. Here's the fence for that, the saw blade, and I put that ripped edge against the fence, and I cut one side, then I flip the piece over and cut the other side. So now what I've got dimensionally is one flat side, 2 perpendicular ends, and a rough side. Now, once you figure out what the width is going to be, you go back over to the table saw, just like you saw, and I go ahead and I put that first finished edge up against the fence, and we got my 2 sides, and I go ahead and rip that to its finished length along the saw there. That way we've got perfect triangles. And the way that you can go ahead and do this pretty simply, I'll see if I can demonstrate, is that once you've got them to size, feel the tops. They should be the same height. And if your piece is truly square, turn one end over end and you shouldn't feel any difference between the top and bottoms. Again, those would be truly parallel if you feel that. These are good enough. Nothing's perfect, but my machines are running pretty true, so I'm pretty happy with it. So let's go ahead over, rip these for width, and we'll get set up on the box fixture. Alright, here we are at the table saw. I've gone ahead and measured 2.5 inches from the inside of the curve for the saw blade out to the fence. As far as squaring these things up, like I talked about before, what I end up doing is ripping one good edge, flipping that over, using that edge to cut the sides to length, and then coming back and using that same edge to cut the secondary long edge, and that way I've got a perfectly rectangular piece here. We're cutting these things. These were a little bit wider. We changed the design a bit to something a little bit shorter, so this is going to give me the opportunity to inspect each piece and see if I can't cut some of the bad wood out like this. This is going to work just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and rip up this whole stack of wood here, and I will start the dust collector, so we'll be done in just a second. For anyone who hasn't used a dado stack before, I'll give you a brief description of what we're doing here. The stacks usually come in a set. This one I've had forever. It comes with an inner and an outer diameter wheel, and the kerf on each one of them is cut so that it cuts square in the corners, and that's how you can tell which one goes to the inside and one goes to the outside of the arbor. You can look up the thickness here in the book. It gives you what size inserts to use, as well as shim stock that comes with it. A couple of different thicknesses of shim stock, as well as the inserted blades. You just basically stack these up with the inserts, with the spacers in between, and give it a test run. And of course, you're going to measure before you make the final cut on your piece. But that's basically how it works. It's just two table saw blades with different sweeper blades stacked in the middle of it. Pretty straightforward. Alright folks, let me show you what we have going on here. We've got our dado stack here, measured out for 1/2 inch. I've got a box joint fixture that I built several years ago now. Up on the table saw, it is riding on 2 runners that are inside the grooves to the saw table itself. I've got a fence here that's perpendicular, and also the edge of it is just flush with the outside of the dado stack. That's going to give us that first cut on our longer pieces here. Also in the back, I've got a removable sacrificial fence that's screwed to the back of the fixture here, so that as the dado stack breaks through the back side of the piece, we don't get a lot of that chip out that you'll normally see using a cutter this wide, given the material as well. It should cut a nice clean break right at the top there. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at my pieces here. I've gone ahead and denoted which side I want to be the bottom. I'm going to be just holding these up, and I'll just be cutting out that 1/2 inch by a little over 5/8 deep groove. The reason it's 5/8 and a little bit more than that is because my piece here is 5/8, and I want these box joints to end up gluing up a little proud of the joint itself, so I can come back with a pad sander and just kiss the tops of all the end pieces and flush them up with the sides. So let me go ahead and get started on these, and we'll set up for the secondary operation, which is just to continue stepping these over and putting the grooves in there. Alright, apparently I lost some footage of me doing these, so I'll just walk you through it. The first piece went up against the stop. This was the very first cut we had with the fence. Goes up against the stop now, and we hit this with the dado stack to get our 1/2 inch groove in there. And then basically all I did was kind of step it over and continue to do that down the line to give us some spacing. What this is here is just a little bit extra width. When I cut these things, it was a little bit wider than I'd expected to. I'll go back and shave that down so that we don't have that little tang on there. But that's basically how we're going to do the large sides. What we're going to do with the smaller pieces, with the shorter sides, is we're going to start and go right up against the stack to begin, or up against the stop to begin with, make our first cut, and then start stepping over. So the longer sides, we had the slot, and on the shorter sides, we're starting off by making the pin on this side. So let me go ahead and do that, and we'll go to the next step.